got this funky number, 32 plus 1/9, whole thing, take the square root of that. That's something around between 5 and 6, because I know the square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 36 is 6. And this is a lot closer to the square root of 36 than square root of 25. So I'm thinking it's roughly 6, especially when we solve for h, and we have an extra 1/3 added to both sides. So h is, in this instance, roughly 6. It actually may be even precisely 6, because the numbers might have just worked out that way. These problems shouldn't be as insane as this looks, but this honestly is the fastest way to solve it, because otherwise you would have at this stage had to subtract 32 from both sides and then have to figure out what numbers multiply to get 32 that add to get 2/3. Oh my goodness, that's a nightmare. So actually you wouldn't multiply, but it would subtract to get 2/3, because this would become a negative sign once it goes over the left. If you're lost there, don't worry. If you use the method of completing the square, you should be okay. All right, next problem. The area of a rectangular sheet of sheet metal, so here is a rectangle. The area of the rectangle equals base times height, or length times width. This is an example, they use length times width. So equals length times width, and it is 216 feet squared, they tell us. So here we go. We've got width, we have length, and that whole thing equals 216. All right, given that, they also tell me that the width equals 6 feet less than the length, so the length minus 6. What are the dimensions of the piece of metal? Oh, I realized a minute ago that I actually didn't solve for the the second part of the equation. So this was just the first part to solve for the height, h equals 6. And if h equals 6, I can find what b is given that equation. So here I go, part 2. It's actually technically part 1 the way I've labeled it. And I can just say 3 times 6, which is my h, minus 2, so 18 minus 2, that's 16. That is what my base equals. So now I solve for both the base, 16, and the height, 6. Those are my answers. Sorry, there's a lot to keep track of when I'm going through so many problems. Hope this is helpful for you though. So here we go. We have the rectangle, we're told the area is 216 like we said. We have a formula for W. We can substitute W in for length times width, and that gives us the formula length times the width, which is already told to be length minus 6, equals 216. We're going to distribute this, so L squared minus 6L equals 216. We're going to still use completing the square, CTS, and that's going to give us something like this. L squared minus 6L plus some number equals 216 plus some number. We know from our little situation up here that that number needs to be a perfect square, and that number is going to be a y squared. So this number right here should actually have a square on it. Okay? And it will factor nicely, that was the whole point of this, into something like L minus. I know that because there's a minus sign, there's a plus sign, so both of my terms have to be minus. Whole thing squared. And what would do that? Well, from above we realized that it has to just equal the middle term 2xy. So here I go. Off to the side, 2x, but x is now L, the variable L. Y equals the middle term, which is 6L. Okay, and if you rather have the minus signs, I could have put negative here and negative there, so it looks just like that, but no biggie if we don't, because it's the same to both sides. There's also L's on both sides, so I just canceled those out. To solve for y, we divide by 2, so 6 divided by 2, that equals 3. So y should equal 3, that should equal 9, that should equal 9, so the whole thing equals 216 plus 9, which is 2.